Nita Flanagan, originally Nita Jones, and David Jones, her nephew. It is a history of the Jones family. Aunt Nita, tell me when you were born, where you were born, etc. Anything else you want to say about it? And I'll ask you questions intermittently.
I was born in Moody, Texas, on a farm. Mom and Papa had just had 2 big floods on their place down on the Leon River. They felt it's time to move out, and they moved out to Moody.
The place on the Leon River, was that where Daddy, Caleb, was born?
Mm-hmm.
And Aunt Reba, too, were born there.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And Amy.
And Amy, too.
Mm-hmm.
Did they own this land, or was this?
No, it was Uncle John's place.
Uncle John.
Mm-hmm. Uncle John, who was Papa's brother.
I see.
Had come here from Kentucky and had bought this place, and he was not married. And he lived on the farm. They had tried to make a living there, but when they were flooded out for 2 years, they decided to go on to the prairie. So they moved up close to Moody because the other brother, Uncle Mike, lived in Moody. And so they went up there, and they lived on out south about 2 miles or more. I don't know exactly how far it was out of town. Then they moved on to the Rice place, which was only about 1.5 miles out of town. And that's where I was.
How far was this from the old home place that had the stream that ran through the backyard that we have the picture of?
That was Grandpa's place, wasn't it?
Yes. Mm-hmm. How far away was this? Not too far. Was it?
It wasn't far.
And this was pretty close to the little town there.
Bland.
Right. It was right by the bridge, where the bridge crossed the Leon River there. I remember seeing that.
Close by.
Mm-hmm. There wasn't too much, a little store and so forth.
Yeah, they had. Mm-hmm. And they had a school. Mom went to school there. And she, of course, it was a limited country school. But I'm amazed from time to time at how much she learned in that one little school, because she was one of the best spellers I've ever known. And she learned music. She could read music. She learned to play the organ. And she had a good mind. And I said, it showed me that the school didn't have to be so fine for students to learn. And she wrote a beautiful hand. And
as I look back on her, she was a very, very bright person.
She could, she was real good with figures. And she learned all of it in that little school.
She was, Grandma was kind of the source of the cultural depth and the intellect. Don't you think that was passed down to you 6 kids?
Well, I think so. Papa was a good man. He had wonderful principles, very strong principles, and but he had not had the training. Now, he was good with figures. Nobody was going to cheat him out of anything. But he was good with figures, and he read a lot. He read. And he taught the Sunday school class there, and he used very, very fair English. He had some of the colloquialisms, but he was he had learned a lot in his lifetime, I tell you.
Would you, when you say he read a lot, what did he read?
The papers. He always took the city paper. In other words, he took Fort Worth Star Telegram as long as we lived there, and or the Dallas Morning News, either one. He read the Bible, as I told you before. He read the Bible very religiously, and now he wasn't a man of books like a man might be today, but he he was intelligent.
Do you think, did Grandma ever read? Was she someone who read the
Yeah.
classics or anything like that?
No, they didn't. She didn't do that.
It was just too far removed from their cultural background,
Yeah, that's
wasn't
right. It was. She read, and we always had plenty of magazines and things, and she would get pretty books for us when we were little, for us to read, and it always. Speaking for myself, I imagine it was true with the older ones, but she would get books for me to paint, and they'd have pretty pictures in it on one side, and then I would color them on the other side, and that sort of thing that stayed with me. I mean, it was kind of a background for my interest in art.
The thing that I always look back on, and I think I could have, like many people that grew up in that rural environment, I could still be there farming in Central Texas. There was some reason why that all 6 of you kids, almost all of you, at least if you didn't get your master's, you had a master's. You worked towards a master's degree, so you were over and above the norm that came out of that Central Texas rural cotton growing environment.
Right.
What do you think caused this?
It's largely my mother. She was a pusher.
Why did she do that? Why was she didn't have anybody to inspire her, really, did she?
Well, I don't think, unless I don't know how much her mother's family, how much influence they had on her, but they were not the education in turned people either. They were just rural people, but they had a great deal of influence because she was born, when Mom her mother died when she was born, and her grandmother and her aunts reared her till so Grandpa married again. They kept her alive when she was born prematurely by fixing hot bricks and making a little bed in between these hot bricks as a kind of like an incubator, and that's the way she survived after her mother died.
Well, Daddy, your brother Caleb.
But what I meant to say was that these aunts and little grandma we called her, had a great influence on her.
Daddy talked about Grandma Bone. Was this the grandma you're talking about?
Grandma Bone.
And he said that he thought that maybe Grandma Bone was the source of the intellect.
Well, probably so. Well, I don't know. He had a good mind. Grandpa had a good mind. He just wasn't directed the same.
But there was some sort of there's the thing that I look at our family, there's some sort of a cultural depth there that has to be traced back to something. You can trace it seemed to me like back through the years. And do you think that Grandma Bone was source of that?
Well,
she was an Indian, wasn't she?
Yes, she was half Indian, I think.
How did Grandpa Taylor meet Grandma Bone?
I don't know. I never did hear that, except they live in the same close communities, joining communities.
Daddy told me that he thought that she kept the kids. She was helping with the kids, and when they were up in East Texas or someplace before he moved to Central Texas, didn't he? He stopped. Is that true?
Who?
Grandpa Taylor. Grandpa Taylor was your great grandpa, wasn't he?
No.
Well, who was Grandma Bone? Was your real grandma? I mean, not your real one, but
no, she was my great grandma.
That's what I thought. So she married somebody before.
She married a Warnell.
But
Warnell or Warnell. That's the reason I'm named Warnell.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Her maiden name was Warnell.
Okay.
And apparently he was Indian.
Who was she first married to? Warnell?
I don't know whether he's Indian or not. Oh, yeah. Yes. Grandma's name was Warnell before she married. And
she had mentioned, but somewhere she married a Clements or a Taylor, didn't she?
Yeah, later.
Now, who was the Clements? Was it Clements or Taylor that she married? That's the connection with you.
Well, all that family Clements.
Was she married to a Clements or was she married to a Taylor? Grandma Bone.
Oh, she married to a Clements.
Clements.
See, Taylor was Mama's father. And so
she comes from the maternal side.
Mm-hmm.
Grandma Bone does.
Mm-hmm.
I see. All right. What do you remember? What are the first things you remember when you were born?
What happened? She married a Clements after Warnell died.
I see.
And then he had all these children, 6, 7 children, all of them Clements.
That's the. I believe that's the man that they.
Now,
Jim Bishop talks about in his book.
Let me get this straight. Her maiden name was Warnell, and he was Indian, I believe, is the way it was. And so Grandma was part Indian. She was half Indian, is the way I understand it. And she was reared by Indian family. I don't know. I'm not quite clear on all of that, except what the Clements book said. I don't know whether that's all of it. But she married a Clements. She didn't marry a Warnell. She married a Clements.
Yeah. Let's go back. Tell me now about the first things you remember there in Central Texas, and tell me about Daddy, and tell me about Aunt Reba and Amy and Grandma and Grandpa and where they were, etc. Just some things that you remember when you first started to remember things.
I don't remember when I was. I guess you have that though. When I was sick, that you said.
Yes.
But I don't remember. But I've heard Papa tell that story so many times, and I'd be sitting over there, and he'd be telling somebody about it. You know.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about Grandma Bone and where she lived. Grandma Bone was the wife of Grandpa Taylor.
Oh.
Grandpa Clements.
Grandpa Clements.
She was the wife of Grandpa Clements, who was a half Indian. And you're telling me about her little house, and tell me about that now, where she lived.
In later years, my years, her little house was still intact, and she still lived there until she got to where she couldn't live alone. But in the meantime, Aunt Rena Elms and her husband built a nice house on right in front of this little house right.
Who was Aunt Rena?
That was her daughter. And whether she gave them the property or whatever, that was their home. That was their little farm there. And I have a picture of her sitting on the front porch of this house and making a coverlet. And I have the coverlet. I inherited the coverlet because I had Grandma's name. And so I got to see her about 2 or 3 times in my lifetime.
Grandma Bone?
Mm-hmm. She was about 5 feet tall, very small. And the Clemenses they were so devoted to her. They have a picture of all the children.
All right, let's go back and you start telling me again back about your early days and what you first remember. And where were you living when you first remembered in your childhood?
I remember, I very vaguely remember living where I was born, but not, I don't remember any incidents. Or it may be that I just saw the place, you know. I don't, and I have seen the place since I grew up. But my really first remembrance is when we lived about 2 miles out of, and I was about 4 years old.
Didn't you all live at the old home place at one time? Or at least stayed there for some time. Grandpa Taylor's home place?
Mom and Papa lived there till after Amy was born.
I see. But you never lived there?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, they moved out before. See that Mama had those 3 children rather rapidly. One of them, Reba's only about, brother's about 20 months older than Mom or something, wasn't it? Born in 7. No,
9.
She was born in 7. He was born in 5.
5, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Amy was born in 1900?
And Amy was born in 1900, and I was born in 1905.
And Aunt Laura in 1910, and Uncle Rankin in 1913.
Right. And so they moved out there. Then they got a place, I believe they call it Howard Place. That's where we lived, close to Moody. And when Mama got sick, why, now brother's story about this and mine a little different. Because I remember it. It seems to me like I remember it so well that I had to go to the cotton patch that afternoon. This is November, and I had to go to the cotton patch with them, and I spent the whole afternoon. Came in the afternoon when they got off work. I heard something, and I had a cat. And they were always teasing me. The kids, were teasing me about my cat. And they'd pull his tail and do things like that to make it yell. And so I heard this little yell. And I said, "Oh, don't do that to my cat." And I went in, and it was Laura cried out. The baby had yelped out. I thought somebody had done something to my cat.
Did Grandma have a...
Now, don't record this.
What was life like? Describe life at this time. You didn't have any hot and cold running water, and how did you manage?
We had a well. At Howard's place, we had a well. I don't remember whether they had any deep wells around there or not. I don't remember that. But we had a well, and we pulled the water up for the horses and everything. And a wood stove.
Did you cook on the same wood stove you heated with?
No, we had we had heaters in the living room. Or we didn't have living rooms in the front bedroom.
No.
And
Did you all stay in the same bedroom with the folks, with Mama, Grandpa, Grandma, or did you have a room that you?
we had a bedroom.
All the kids
I
stayed in
think
the same bedroom.
no, I think we had 2 beds in that one first bedroom. The bedroom her mom and papa lived. I think we had 2 beds there. And then the other kids, I think they stayed in the same room. Reba and Lonnie and Reba had the same room. And Amy slept together, and brother had a bed. I don't remember too much detail. I know the only way we traveled was in a buggy or was in the buggies.
What about what do you have? What about bathroom facilities? You had a slop jar and a.
I don't remember. We had a slop jar. I think we had to go out.
Outdoor toilet.
Mm-hmm.
During the night, in the cold of the night, you just went out.
Had to go out. Mm-hmm. No, they hadn't come in at that time. I remember we didn't have one anyway. Of course, they just played. We didn't have toys like we have now. We had dolls.
You made those dolls, probably, didn't you?
Yeah.
Or Grandma did?
Well, no, I don't believe it's made. I think we bought. But they were very small.
What was Christmas like? You wake up in the morning and...
We had fruit mostly. Fruit and pecans and walnuts and things like that. We didn't have very many toys because we weren't able to buy them, I guess. And Aunt Mag was Mama's sister. Usually sent us some kind of package that had a little something for everybody. And several Christmases, even after that, we would have had very small Christmas hadn't been for Aunt Mag.
She lived in Waco when I knew her.
Mm-hmm. Well, she lived in Moody. She worked for years and years for Mr. Hunley, which is, I think he was a lawyer or something. And Waco and went and started to work. And she still sent me, proud of that ring. And if we didn't get Aunt Mag's package, we didn't have much Christmas. Papa and Mama would do what they were able to do. Fruit, nuts, little toys, and things like that. I think they made us the first little wagon we had. I think Papa made the guy's wagon. It was served as more than just a toy. I mean, it wasn't, it was big enough to hold little things. All stuff out about the garden to preserve freezing thing like that, because nobody had that at that time. But
tell me about what I kind of would like to know is what was life like. You have any stories, things that are memorable in your mind in your early childhood, and especially things that relate to Daddy and Amy and them, and some things that you had, some things that you fondly remember, and things maybe you don't so fondly remember.
Well, I was just trying to think that, you see, Amy was 5 years older than I am, so I can't remember that we played together very much, because there's such a difference in our ages. And it seemed Reba and brother and Reba and Amy they grew up together. And I didn't participate in their activities very much from the very beginning because they were all small.
And Laura was 5 years younger than you are.
I was kind of in between.
Yeah.
And she and Rankin were always together because they were near the same age, two and a half years old difference. I was kind of in betweener. And
did you do a lot of playing alone?
yes, I did. I don't remember any girl. I don't remember playing with any little girls. I don't remember any little girls that lived close to us.
Do you think that maybe this fact that that you didn't have anybody to play with your age is the reason kind of you went the reading college professor type of route? Do you think this is?
I think Mama had a great deal to do that because she'd buy me little books, pretty little books that I always cherished, and then she'd buy me paint. I almost learned to read by reading the little cards, the little Sunday school cards that we got when we were children. And then she used to.
Well, if I look at the Jones children, you and your brothers and sisters and so forth, I look at Daddy, and Daddy was a very practical individual, a very mechanical individual, who was smart, but he was never a reader, and what I might call an intellectual in that sense of the word. But on the other hand, my impression of Aunt Reba was that she was. She was a great reader. She always knew anything that I knew. When I'd come home and say, we're reading this, she had already read that. She already knew all about that. Maybe that was because she was a teacher. I don't know. But my impression of her was that. And then my impression of you was the same way. That Amy, you were a reader.
Amy was the musical one. She'd always go to the organ or go to the piano. Play.
Well, of course, I never did know Aunt Amy. Just about 2 occasions was all I ever met her, for short periods of time.
And she was very energetic. And she has some wonderful stories about her. How she used to heard the stories about.
Well, tell me.
About she was so energetic. Well, Mama. Mama taught all of us to play the organ. We had an organ. Old organ. Taught all of us. That's another thing she learned in school. In the little school that they had, she learned to love poetry the same way. So anyway, Amy was turned to music, and Reba was more like Reba liked to cook and everything. She liked music too, but she didn't study it like Amy would. So later years, now when she was teaching and staying at home, we had this teacher, Amy's teacher, come out to our house with the Reba voice. It inspired me. This is like they taught then. I picked it up, and just by practicing, and I learned to play. That's the way I learned to play. I didn't have a teacher except.
Where did Daddy start to sing?
So Amy, when he went to college, he started to. Well, he taught. He sang sang the choir at church, and he had a good voice. And so when he went to college, he worked. What did he do? He worked cafeteria in the dining room.
Yeah,
and helped pay for his his voice lessons.
Paid from Miss Boone.
And then he took from Miss Boone. Came into Greenville area.
Tell me a little bit about Aunt Amy. I don't know too much about her. Tell me about what you remember about her.
Well, she and I didn't get along as well as Reba and I did. We were always fussing.
Oh, really?
But we went to school together for many years, and she was an old buggy. This is about my childhood. When we moved to where the old place is there in Denton County, why, we lived in the Zion community down south of us, so schoolhouse. We just taught through the 9th grade or something like that.
That's a Prosper around in there.
Well, where we lived, the old place. You remember, you've been there.
Out of Sandy Hill?
No, it wasn't Sandy Hill. It's just out in the country. Navo.
No, I didn't know. I never went there.
Oh, you're bound to have.
I never did.
They were living there when you were born.
The first place I remember that we
No,
went was
not
to
when you
Sandy
were
Hill. Was it Sandy
Oh,
Hill?
that's around Denton.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but I thought surely y'all had been by the old place over in Navo or out in the country.
No, Daddy never took me back.
Oh, you don't mean it. Well, anyway, that's where we moved when we moved up there from Moody.
Yeah.
We moved.
I feel like I know about it because I heard Daddy talk about it. Coming from the war, he went back there. And
Yeah, we lived. See, Papa and 2 other men came up to North Texas to buy farms, property, and they looked at property all over, around the county. They got a real estate man. 2 other men bought farms west of Denton, and Papa bought this one east of Denton, about 18 miles. Well, it's Prosper.
On the way to McKinney.
Between McKinney and Denton. And so Papa bought this farm, and he couldn't get possession for a year. Dixon says, well, you can live on my place. I'm not moving up here, but you can live on my place over there close to Rock Hill. Yeah, that's what we did when we were up here. We moved over. We lived at Rock Hill, which is close to Prosper. And the 2 older ones, Reba and Lonnie, went into Prosper because they were in early high school. And Amy went to Rock Hill, which was just a mile or 2 from us, and she walked it. Then when we moved out to the place where we lived for so long, all of them went to school to Prosper in a buggy, or either buggy or horse. I went to, when it came my time, I went to Zion. First time. Well, on the way, right across the field from us, lived Miss Allen that had 3 or 4 children that walked down to Zion. And I'd walk over there and meet them on the corner and walk on down with them. I walked about, I expect it's nearly a mile by myself. Then I'd meet them and we'd walk on down to Zion. And there were 2 other families that walked to their children. And so then by that time, Brother and Reba and Amy, the second year I went to school, Mama sent me to school with them. The last year they were in high school. And then after that, Amy and I went to school together. And
what year did you all move to Denton County from Central Texas?
19, and my brother and I decided we're different on that. I guess he knew more about it than I did. But I was 4. I think it was that we moved up there. And I think we moved in January or something like that.
When you went to Zion School, describe a day. You'd go to school in the morning, and how many teachers were there? How many classes were there?
Well, my school was the 1-teacher school.
Okay.
Zion was the 1-teacher school at that time.
How'd that operate during the day?
And she had all the classes.
1 through 12 or 1 through 10 or
Well,
what?
no, about 8.
1 through 8.
Through 8.
In the same room?
Mm-hmm. And the boys sat on one side and the girls sat on the other side. And I talked so much that she moved me over on the boys' side. And I had to sit over there with the rest of the school. And I didn't tell Mama, but somebody else told her a good while after that. Somebody else told her, but she didn't spank me. She got after me.
I must have taken after you because I always get in trouble. And Miss Patton used to get on me in Greenville High School for talking so much.
I'd talk. I'd turn around and talk. Yeah. And she'd turn me back around. First thing you know, I'd turn around. And we had to carry our... we didn't have water on the ground, school ground. We had to carry water from a house that was about half get to go after the water. And most of the time, it's two little ones would go. If 2 little ones went, I mean, she'd have to have 2 little ones. We'd have a big bucket, and we'd carry it, one on one side, one on the other. And that's the way we got the water.
How did they manage to teach 8 grades in one school in one day?
We had short classes.
But how did you get through the subjects? There were 2 or 3 classes, 2 or 3 grades studying the same thing?
That I couldn't tell because I didn't know enough about it at that time to know what it's all about. I just know we had spelling, arithmetic, and reading. That's about it. And coloring, we do some coloring. But that was it. And, then I when Amy graduated, by Laura and Rankin, who had been going to Zion, started going to Prosper, and so the 3 of us would go in the buggy or on horseback.
That was a bigger school.
Yeah, it was 10th, whatever the grade was at that time. It's 10th grade, I think.
You went to 10th grade and you were all in one room when you went to
No, in the little school, we just went to about the 9th, 8th to 9th grade. And then they had to go to, you'd have to go to another community if you wanted to go. And so when Amy was going to school with Brother Rena, I always want to put her with him, Brother and Reba. Oh. But, and then I started the year before Reba and Lonnie. The last year Reba and Lonnie were in high school. I went to the 2nd grade.
Who was the best student among you? Do you think it was Reba, Amy? Reba.
She always made higher grades than Brother did.
That's what Daddy said. Daddy said she always beat him.
Mm-hmm.
And how about Amy? Was she a good student?
Well, she's pretty good. As far as I remember, she was.
Well, how about you? Were you a good student?
No, I wasn't a good student.
You weren't a good student? That surprises me.
I passed.
Because you talk too much? Is that what
I passed. I don't know why. That's all I can tell you. Then when we had a lot of experiences in that, going to and from school, and Papa would always make arrangements, somebody for us to keep our horse in the shed, in a shed, and when we went in the buggy, we'd have to unharness, undo the buggy, and back it off, and take the horse out of the shafts. Then in the afternoon, we'd have to put him back in and go home. And then if the roads were too muddy the roads were too muddy to take a buggy on, well, we'd have to go horseback. And when I was going that first year, I went up there with him. Brother, if we had to ride horseback, Brother had Ben, that old white horse, old white horse. Well, I would ride with him, and Reba and Amy would ride back. And Brother would nearly always do something to get Ben disturbed. And then he'd rear up. And he just whooped like this, you know how tall he was. And it just scared the daylights out of me. I nearly always, I'd get to school crying.
Did he do that on purpose?
I said he did. I don't know what he did. But I don't think he was doing it to really irritate me. He was doing it just to show the horse up. I mean, it seemed to me that he aggravated the horse. He'd kick him in the side or something, And he was kind of a, like I'll say. And I'd get up there and I'd be so sore because I bumped up and down on that horse so. And I would, when I do that, it had a saddle that had a rim around the back. It wasn't just straight up, and the saddle would have a rim about this wide on his saddle, and I'd get so close to that thing, and my nose would be. I'd rub up and down on Brother's back, and my nose would be so sore. And I'd get sore down here for rubbing on that saddle because I'd get up so close to it,
Yeah.
Oh, some of those days are rough.
Going to school on old Ben was not a favorite thing for you to do, huh?
And well, otherwise, when the weather was all right, why we went in the carriage. When I mean it wasn't so muddy that we couldn't go in the carriage. I mean that we could. Unless it was somebody that we couldn't go in the carriage while we were on horseback. But in the carriage, well, the four of us got along pretty well because we had curtains on the carriage and we could kind of keep reasonably warm. Those were pretty rough days as far as I was concerned. But he'd deny that now. He'd deny all that, I told you, if he heard me tell it.
How did Daddy treat you girls? Did he try to dominate you? Was he mean to you? Was he protective of you, or what did he do?
I can't talk for anybody except for me.
Well, I want you to talk. You talk.
Now, of course, he and Reba are always kind of like this, As far as I remember, that's the way I remember.
They were close together.
Yeah, they were close together.
Did they gang up on you?
Kind of pals. No, not Reba. She was my pal. But I don't know anything about how Amy's. Seemingly that is all right. The three of them always seem to get along all right, as far as I.
Daddy always used to say what a sweet girl Amy was. Sweet personality.
She was. She's really sweet.
She was kind of a lovable little girl. Is that true?
Yeah, she was.
And
she was that way always with me. I mean, we never fussed. It seemed to me we never fussed very much. Time. Amy was. She and I went to school together about there for a couple of years, and Reba. Well, I told you about though. I've already told you about how Miss Green would come out and twice a week with us and spend the night with us. We all enjoyed her. She was a delightful person, and she'd give readings. She taught expression, and she'd give readings. She had some of the best. Pieces, and Papa just died laughing. He would get the biggest kick out of that, And she'd play the organ for us, and we'd sing, and we just had always enjoyed it so much. Mama made mush a lot of times for supper, cornmeal mush, and then for breakfast, if there's any leftovers, she'd put it out, set it out, wouldn't put it in an ice box. And she'd set it out, and in the morning, she would slice it and fry it. Kind of like
I remember eating that.
You remember that? Well, Miss Green told us what to call it. We didn't know what to call it. We called it fried mush. She says that's polenta. And so we got a new word in our vocabulary. It was polenta that we had.
Where did, and I want to ask you right
and
now
they
what I'm
still
thinking about.
call it polenta.
What is Unca Bunca?
We never used that term.
When Daddy, we used to have Unca Bunca, and I remember Grandma would make me Unca Bunca. That's cornbread in buttermilk. You crumbled up cornbread in buttermilk.
I don't believe I ever heard that term.
But Grandma, I got that from Daddy and Grandma.
We ate cornbread and milk a lot of times. Very often. It was for breakfast or supper.
When I spent a lot of summers, not a lot, but I mean, I would go to Grandma's there on the old Sand Hill farm there in Denton, east of Denton, about 2 miles, 2.5 miles out. And I would go in there and I would come in the afternoon and I'd say I was hungry. And Grandma would say, "You want some Unca Bunca?" And she gets some buttermilk and some old cornbread and put it in there. And I just loved it.
I did.
And
I still like it.
Me too. I still love Unca Bunca. I never get to eat it because nobody ever fixes. I don't carry buttermilk, anymore. My kids never ate Unca Bunca, but we did all of our life. We ate Unca Bunca.
Well, anyway, then when Amy graduated, well, the first year over there.
Was Uncle Rankin born in Denton County?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's right. You went over there in 1910. Was Aunt Laura born in Denton County?
She was born in Collin County.
Then Central Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
no, she was born. Wait a minute. I believe she was born.
You said you were there.
She was born. Yeah, she was born in McClellan County.
Yes.
Moody.
So you all didn't move till after 1910.
No, that's right.
I was thinking Daddy told me 1911.
I think he said 11. I was thinking that, you see, she was born in lands. I can't remember anything. September. I remember. She was born in September, and we moved in. I think he says we moved in January, but I said we moved in November. But I don't know. I'm not sure.
I have what he said. I don't know.
Well, that suits me, but I know when you told me about it that I had a different idea about it. But anyway, that's all right. He's older than I was. But anyway, she was born in Moody, and then Rankin was born in Denton County.
What do you remember about Grandpa and and his personality? To me, you see, as when I knew Grandpa, he was not very affectionate to me when I was a young boy. And I remember him mainly of the times that he got on me for things that I would do wrong. And of course, he was probably around 70 at the time that I remember him. I only remember him fondly a few times, and that was when I would go to the fields with him when I was up there, and I was about 4 to 5 years old. And he would open up a watermelon at noontime and things like that. And Grandma and I would go out and have lunch with him when he was plowing the field. But I just remember that the least little thing I did wrong, he was very gruff to me. And on the other hand, see, Grandma was so affectionate, and I loved her so much. And she would take me fishing, and I'd stay the whole week. And I kind of dreaded being around Grandpa, but Grandma I loved dearly. And I even remember him that way in 1937 when I went to Tyler and spent the week with he and Aunt Laura and Grandma at Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that if you don't mind.
Well, I don't know. Papa never spanked me. He never got after me very much in his life. In my life, I don't know that Brother Reba could say the same. It seemed to me that he was, according to Brother, he was rather rough with him. But I always saw him as rather calm, and he was always. Well, I just never. I can't remember if he ever got after me very much. And I remember when I was small enough that I'd get up in his lap and he'd put my shoes on. And I just loved for him too, because he's always good and warm. And we'd sit there by the stove and he'd put my shoes on, and I could smell that tobacco. It's kind of, wasn't that I resented it. I didn't resent it because it kind of smelled good. He's nice and warm. He'd talk to me, baby talk, and he'd put it on my shoes. And I thought he could advertise and all so good. I just remember thinking all that. And then after I got older, he never got after me. I just don't remember, except one time. He never spanked me or anything, except one time. I was, I guess, probably 13 or something, I don't know. But Laura did something to me, and I sized her. And he slapped me. And I didn't know he was back there. And it was such a surprise.
Where, on the bottom?
No, he hit me on the face.
Oh, he did.
He hit me on the spank. Did I say spank?
You said slap me.
Yeah, he slapped me on the face. He was standing behind me. He just reached around and slapped me because I was so smart. With his Laura. And that's the only time it humiliated me so, because he had never done anything like that. But and the only time he ever did, and all the time I worked with him and worked and day after day and day after day, I worked with him, and he never got after me about anything. In fact, he was just the opposite, and would always. And the kids out in Oregon always asked me about what I did and all that. And I would tell them about how I worked and all. And they got the idea that he was mean to me. He just a mean old man making me work hard. And I said, I don't want you all to think that he's mean. He wasn't. He had work to do, and I was the only one to do it. And I said, he was always real nice to me. He'd always fix my team for me and bring it up and tell me what to do, and I'd do it. And one time, for instance, I was plowing along, and wherever my plow got kind of hung in the center, where the cotton was coming up, and my plow got kind of hung. One blade, how plows like one blade got kind of hung in that center part, and it wasn't easy to get out. And I started saying, "Whoa, whoa!"
Was this a walking plow?
No, it was a cultivator.
Okay.
And I was pushing on, trying to get it out. And the team, when I began to holler "whoa" at the team, well, they got faster. And so I was just plowing up that cotton, and I just thought, "Oh, Papa's going." And I finally got him stopped and looked around, and there stood Papa with a smile on his face. And he was never gruff and never got after me about what I did or anything like that, about working. And so I never saw that side of him.
This is see.
But
Daddy and Grandpa had problems.
Yeah, I know about the problems. But when he was coming up, your daddy was coming up, and he was a young man, and probably had a lot of problems, and wasn't making any money and all things. And he had wasn't the best humor all the time, I imagine. So that, I think that made a difference probably.
Talk about Daddy and Grandpa's problems for me. I want to know those things.
Well,
I've taught. See, Daddy's told me all about it,
yeah.
and Mother told me a lot about it, and I get that. And I'd just like to know what your opinion. Be candid with me.
She probably knew what he told her, what her
Yeah.
dad told her, what your daddy told her. Well, and I was quite young at that time, and it scared me. It sometimes scared me to death. But Papa, I guess, didn't understand or young men, young boys, too much, or maybe he understood them too well or something. And he imagined, I guess, a lot about what brother was doing and all this, that, and the other. But they did have a lot of fusses, and usually because brother wanted to do something he thought he ought to, that Papa thought he ought to do.
For instance,
And uh,
girls.
taking the buggy out,
Uh-huh.
and poor thing, I always felt after I got older, I felt sorry for brother because he didn't have any way to go, a special horse and everything, and so he gave Papa a pretty hard time about it, and Papa gave him a hard time about it, and Papa didn't want him running around like he knew boys did, and I think what I understand, Papa's kind of one of the boys when he was growing up.
Yeah.
And so I imagine he thought all the rest of them were. He didn't want his to be like that or something. And anyway, he would go out. Papa wouldn't like it. Come back in. Papa would get after him. He'd get real smart with him, and that didn't help anything. So.
A lot of was
so his
Daddy belligerent? He was he.
They were just kind of like that,
Uh-huh. And what age was this? In his teens?
In the teens, in early teens.
But before that, you don't remember too much anyway.
No, I don't remember.
You were 15 by the time he was 15 by the time you remember too much about it.
Yeah, that's right. So, and I remember one time he was going off, and when he'd start off, used to kind of be a joke to the rest of us. When brother'd start off to do something, he would start to go somewhere or something. Papa'd start telling him what to do, and now don't you do so and so, and don't you do so. Brother'd start on. He'd go through one rigmarole, and brother'd start on, and then he'd say, now so and so and so and so, and she'd stop him. He'd stop him 3 or 4 times before he'd ever get to the bucket. Make brother so mad he nearly died.
Yeah.
So he'd usually go off mad, and then he'd take it out on the horse, and they'd go down the road just to wind. One time he was going somewhere Papa didn't want him to go, but he was going to go anyway. And he was taking a bath. Of course, we had to have a tub in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And so Papa was standing outside the door. Brother's inside taking a bath, and Papa got telling him all this stuff, and brother's kind of sassing him back, and I thought, I was just scared to death. I thought sure they were going to get together. They really did have a good one that night.
And just shouting
at each other, and Papa getting after him, telling him what to do, and brother sassing, talk back to him, and that's something you didn't do with Papa to get by with him. And
did he whip him?
No, I never did see him whip him, but he talked to him. And then when he finally got out of the tub and got out of the kitchen, got dressed and started to go, then Papa started in on him again.
What would Grandma do?
She'd sit off him. I don't remember ever doing anything, trying to stop it or anything. except I do remember sometimes that they talked after they went to bed, and she'd tell him.
You overheard it?
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, at one time I slept in the room with him for one period of time, because we had to have two beds in each room.
Yeah.
We just had two bedrooms.
And let's see, when did this start? After he went, after y'all moved to Denton, that you remember this happening?
Oh yeah, that's when he's. See, we moved over there before he graduated from high school.
You think? You see, I remember in the early '30s, and I don't remember too much affection between Grandpa and Daddy. When I look back on it, I don't remember any affection. I remember
Well,
Daddy when Grandpa
affection,
died.
You would never see him. You never saw Papa reach up and put his arm around any of us.
And that's right.
No, that just wasn't part of his being.
I never. He never picked. As I know, Grandpa never picked me up and like the thing about tying your shoes or something like that. He never. He was always very gruff with me, and I was afraid of him. And I looked at Daddy. See, he and Daddy in the same way. They had that same relationship. Whereas on the other hand, Grandma was just the most affectionate thing. I mean, I just crawl up in that big old fat woman's arms and I just loved her to death. I just never. She'd come in there and wake me up in the morning, you know. I'll tell you a story about when Pet was born. Do you remember Pet? That was after you left.
What'd you say?
What we called old Pet. It was a cow.
Oh yeah.
And I was. And I use this story right now to teach voice. I was in that old iron bed that had those little rosés on it, and I was in that room, the south room, bedroom, and I slept in there. And I don't know who slept with me, but that's where I slept when I went to see Grandma and Grandpa. And I was there alone that night, with them that week, and you know, it all runs together. I don't know when I went and when I came home, or whether I was there one day or whether I was there a week or what. But I remember that I woke up and it was a clear, sunny morning in the summertime, and I woke up and I heard this calf going, "Ma, ba, ba," and I jumped up and I went in and I said, "Grandma, who is it? What is that calf? Where's that calf?" Because I didn't, you know, I recognized it as calf. And she says, old so and so has dropped her calf. Papa and I are going out there. You want to go with us? And she says he's hooking up the wagon right now. So we went out and went down the lane, we called it, towards the tank. You see, and we went all the way around where the stream came into the tank. And went across a dirt bridge or something across that stream, and there was this old, I don't know, the old Pet's mother. Well, Pet was a little bitty gangly calf, see, and I'll never forget that as long as I live. I saw that mother licking that calf, and she would lick that calf so hard she would knock it down, and the calf would kind of get up, you know, and she'd keep licking. She
knew what to do.
She was
able to get up.
That's right. And she was exercising. She was licking after birth and all that stuff off of the calf. And I just thought that, and I just was amazed at that. That was the prettiest little beige and tan calf, and I always loved that calf. See, so Grandma says, "I'll give you this calf one of these days." And sure enough, I got that cow. And mother, and you know, that's the cow that Daddy took. And we had during the 30s that we traveled with it at Elmont, at Vineyard, and New Salem, and it was my job to go out and take that cow out and stake it. He always had during the day he always had somebody made arrangements with someone that he could take that cow off and stake it, and it's a great long rope, and he'd drive an axle or something in the ground, and I'd tie that thing, and he showed me how to tie it. And that was my job, to go get the cow when I came home from school and take the cow out there after he'd milked her in the morning, see, so that and we did that even in Denton. We had that cow even in Denton when we lived on Maple Street.
You did.
Yes, and I use that story because I tell my kids, if that calf had a vibrato on it, it'd have the most beautiful tenor voice in the world. And we talk about creating energy, and singing,
Yeah.
and so that was. But anyway, those are things I remember about Grandma, and I don't remember anything about Grandpa at that time. All I know that he was distant to me, and I just wondered if that was the way it was with him.
Yeah, well, that's just his nature. It's
Uh-huh.
kind of his nature, because he was reared without. You see, you remember he was reared without a mother.
No, I didn't know that.
His mother died when he's 5 years old.
I see. No, I didn't know that. See.
And he was reared with the man.
But see, Daddy never talks about the Joneses too much. He always talks about the Taylors and the Clements.
Well, we just didn't know the Joneses. They all lived in Kentucky, except the ones at Moody.
Yeah, he talks about those. Now we went by and met those.
Uncle John lived with us for several years, and
Grandma didn't like that too much.
Well, he was kind of hard. He's kind of hard to get along with him. But he didn't have real still.
Yeah.
He's long.
She didn't like him being around Daddy. My daddy.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
She didn't like him being around. And I don't know why. I didn't ask Daddy too much about that.
He liked to tease me. I remember how he used to tease me. That's one reason I thought that Laura was my cat. He always teased me about my cats. He'd do something to her, pull its tail or something, make it squeal.
John would.
Uncle John would. And then I'd holler out at him, and that just make Mama so mad. It's things like that she didn't like. And, well, he's an old bachelor, and he had to have something to do. Something to do. And I remember that. But he was just a peculiar old guy.
Oh.
But let's see, we're back and going to school. Rankin and I went to school up there several years together, across for 5 miles. And a few times after I was in high school, I guess, it'd be so muddy we couldn't take the car or the horses either, because there were some mud holes that horses could hardly go through. And so I said one morning, and if the ground were frozen, we wouldn't take the horse because they'd go down in the ice, in a mud hole, and they'd cut their hoofs. So I walked that 5 miles in that cold weather. And then another time we were going on account of the mud, and Laura wanted to go, so she went, and that was one of the worst things that ever happened to her. The little old thing just couldn't make it, and I'd have to stop, and we'd have to stop, and I'd have to punch the mud off her shoe. Start up again, the first thing you know, they'd be somebody she couldn't raise them.
The black mud.
Yeah. That was awful.
Yeah.
Mama never should have let her go. And the morning that brother came home from, I think he'd been to see Rena. But anyway, I was walking to school that morning, and I met him about halfway. And I was walking to school. He was walking. He'd come in on the train, and he was walking across because he had to go to school. He was teaching school,
Oh, this is after the World War I.
And I saw him coming, head up, down maybe a half mile or something, and he was smoking a cigar. And that's the first time I cried and I cried and I cried. Because he was smoking. And so we had quite a few experiences.
He, if you heard the story, I'm sure he told you the story about him. See, he started smoking during World War I,
Yeah.
and he and he said he had a pipe, and he was sailing into New York Harbor or somewhere on the troop ship, and he said he saw the Statue of Liberty, and he said to himself, he said, I don't ever want my mama to know I smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said he took that pipe and threw it just as far out into that ocean or bay or whatever it was that he probably did. And said he wished he'd have stopped for good at that time, but he started back.
Started smoking cigars.
Yeah.
And but that like killed me when I saw that he was smoking. and I could hardly talk to him when I got to him, because I just loved him, and I just thought that we had a lot of fun with old Brack. Brack was the old horse that all of us went to school with. Papa bought him out in West Texas. He was a ranch horse, and you could trust him to round up cows or anything like that. You put on him and start to round up cows. Well, he knew where to go. I've ridden him to the pasture, and the cows would be up and back the pasture. And Papa found him at a sale, and the man told him that he was so gentle, and he was. Papa said, "I want one that's gentle because kids could all count on him. He was so smart. He could do anything. Sometimes we'd be playing along coming from school. I'd put Laura up in the seat and pedal, and I'd ride behind. I'd turn around and slide down his tail." All kinds of tricks like that. And
Well, he didn't get kicked.
well, we just knew, we didn't think Brack could ever kick him.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you how smart he was. Maybe you've heard these stories, but you might like to record them. One time we had ice storm came up while we were at school. And I hurried home across the ridge. It had this ridge between our house and town, but it had a hump in it. We started across with Brack and buggy, and we got up to this hump, and he couldn't stand up. He couldn't pull it. I was oldest one, and I didn't know what. I went around and unhitched him from the shafts and rolled the buggy back. He got up and went off. So we got the buggy kind of over to the side, and there was a hill just to the side. We walked up there, and I told him the story.
This was on the way home.
On the way home.
Yeah.
And we called, how did we get? Didn't call because we didn't have a telephone. Called Mr. Wheeler, I guess, and he went down and told Mama and Papa. And they just told us to spend the night. Probably the next day the ice would be gone. Sure enough it was, so we got in the buggy next. That was one time that he was so smart. And another time, I was going to school in Frisco. This is after Mama would take me out of Prosper because it wasn't accredited school, and put me in Frisco so I would graduate without having to go to extra year of college. Like Brother and Reba did.
Yeah.
And Amy. So I was going to school in Frisco, and I was riding 8 miles back and forth. And I would read when, of course, I couldn't keep him trotting all the time. When he wasn't trotting, well, I'd read my book. And I was riding sideways. And so one day something happened, and he jumped. He saw something on the side of the road or something. He jumped, and I fell off, and my foot was in the stirrup. And he waited till other instance I can't think of right this minute. Then when he got so old he couldn't work or couldn't do anything, well, of course, Papa just turned him out in the pasture and took care of him. And Mama was at home by herself one morning, and she heard him nicker, and she looked out, and there was a kind of a grassy knoll just below the barn, the lake, and the barn. And it's kind of a grassy knoll. It's spring, I guess. She said it's green. I remember it was green. And then the branch went on around it that way. He looked out, and he was standing up there facing the house. And he nickered 3 times and lay down. And he never.
How old was he?
We didn't know.
How long had you all had him?
Oh, I don't know. That was after I married.
Oh, yeah.
I was just before they left over there.
So you bought him when you after 1910.
Mm-hmm.
You bought him in Denton County.
Mm-hmm. We bought him.
What year did you marry?
28. He was rather old when we got him. I mean, he wasn't a young horse at all. He'd been rounding up cattle in West Texas quite a while. But anyway, he was just knowledgeable for a horse.
What year did you start to Wesley College?
25.
1925. And you that's where you met Charles?
No, I went in 23, I'm sorry.
In 23.
I graduated in 25.
Okay. Well, tell me a little about those years. You met Charles at Wesley College?
Mm-hmm. I went to Wesley College, and I had $5 in my pocket.
That's about 500 now.
And through Brother Bowen had helped all of us. You know, he helped Brother get into Wesley College, and he helped Reba get into TWC at this college at Fort Worth. And
I didn't know Reba went to TWC.
she went there first year.
Oh, she did.
Mm-hmm. And then he helped me get in Wesley. Amy.
And you went to Wesley too?
Oh, she graduated from Wesley.
Uh-huh.
And then he helped me, and so told me to go on over. I went, and I had $5 in my pocket, and I was assigned a room, and I was in a room with a woman from Blue Ridge. She and I roomed together that year, and we became good friends, closest friends.
Uh-huh.
And
who is this now? This is not the woman who lives in Irving.
no, she lived Anna, and the one in Irving I didn't know until after I married.
I see.
So anyway, they gave me the 3rd floor to keep the 3rd floor. I had to sweep it. Every day, I believe, and mop it once a week. But I got sick, and I had this pain in my side and everything. And he told me that I had appendicitis. He said, "Now you don't have to be operated on right now." It's what I was doing. He said, "I would advise you not to." So I told Miss Holders about it, and she talked to Mr. Taylor, who was manager in the city. He said, "Well, we'll try to get her another job."
It was easy work compared to what you've been doing all your life, though, wasn't it?
And so he got me a job in the dining room, silverware and stuff, put it up. And I worked at that the rest of the I didn't. I started working. I exited in the library, and and I really enjoyed that. And the next summer, she wanted to be off, because I had learned how to bind the book, fix the books and all that kind of thing. I learned all about it. So I did that could leave me with it. Well, I went right. Charles came in.
Was Charles younger or older than you?
He's older.
He was. How many years?
He was about two. No, let's see. Yeah, about 2.5 years old. That's right. He was born in 3, and he became one of the debaters that year. They always have this debate at the end of the year between the two societies, the Astonians and the BJs.
Uh-huh.
He was a BJ and I was an Astonian. And so he was one of the BJ debaters. And this is always a very big event in Wesley College at that time. And I was the assistant yell leader for the college yell leader. They nominated me for yell leader and nominated another girl. And she won by about 50 votes. And so I was assistant and she was the yell leader. And I was also yell leader for the Estonians. So in the debate, when the debate came, the Estonians on one side and the VJs over on the other side and all the visitors in the back, So I was yell leader that night for he was the debater for the BJs and I was yell leader for the Estonians. And the BJs won the debate. And I was already going with him by that time. No, so they gave him a bouquet of red roses, and he came down off the stage and gave them to me, handed them to me.
How romantic.
Yes. And I was already wearing his sweater. He played football, and I was wearing his sweater.
I see.
And they gave him a little football for
the gold football.
Yeah, a little gold football. So he gave me that football too later. And also, he became a Mason, and I wore his Masonic ring.
I believe Daddy had one of those little gold footballs.
I bet he did too. He played football.
Yeah.
And he had a sweater.
Yeah.
Charles didn't have the regular sweater. He was kind of a second string, whatever you call it. And he had one of the lightweight sweaters. But anyway, I enjoyed it. And so that's the way we met. And then he was waiting tables when he became attracted to me, I think. And it's after, another little incident that might fit in here is that I had long hair, of course, when I went to Wesley. And I went through the summer, that next summer I went to school in summer, and I still had my long hair. And there were about 8 of us there that had long hair, and we had a little long hair club. And then I went back to school, I still had long hair. And I was just one of 2 or 3 that had long hair. And so when Jimmy Lovell, who was in high school with me, nominated me for the yell leader that second year. And the other girl was the most popular girl on campus. She was from Trenton. And as I said, she won by about 50. Jimmy told me later that she beat me on 50 votes. And he says, if you had had short hair, you would have won. Well, I didn't do anything bad. I went ahead. So one night, 3 girls came in my room. Bona, my roommate, was one of them. And she said,
Bona, now I know Bona.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bona, what was her last name?
Bona McAllister.
And she married Bona
Aston Smith.
Bona Smith. Yeah, that's
she's Bona Smith.
She used to come see you on King Street there.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember.
And so 3 of them came in and says, we're going to cut your hair. I said, okay. And they were so surprised. They were all prepared for a big argument. And I said, well, okay. And so they cut it, and they said, we're going to curl it now before you see yourself. They had the curlers and everything. And so they did. They cut my hair, and they curled it, and wrapped something around it so it'd be there next morning. And I went down to breakfast. I was kind of late going to breakfast. And when I went in, everybody was there, and they all clapped.
What was the long hair bit? Why? Wait, was this the style or what?
I just wanted it, I guess.
Okay, I mean,
I was kind of opposed to short hair. You know how there's controversy when they first started wearing short hair.
Yeah.
And just very few girls, and most of them were the flirty ones, you know, that cut their hair first.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of developed a dislike for it. And and that was so funny. Well, Charles, of course, was there. And he told me later, he said, I never had noticed you till you cut your hair.
What was Charles your first boyfriend, or did you have some boyfriends in high school?
Yeah, no, I didn't have a boyfriend in high school. Or we just, the way we were in high school, there were 3 boys, is Lee and Clyde Northcutt and Herman Hassel. And then there was Ruth McCormick, Lucia Rogers, and I. That we ran around together. Those boys ran around together, and we all went to league, the Epworth League in the afternoon, Sunday afternoon. And then right across the street, the Northcutt boys lived, and his mother was their mother was our sponsor, and we'd all go over there and we'd eat. And she always had stuff for us to eat. She always had stuff to eat. You had to eat when you went to her house. And they were the ones that had the car. And they were the ones that had the first radio in town and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we just ran around together. The 3 boys and the 3 girls. We didn't date. We'd go
Did
riding.
y'all pair up?
No, we didn't pair up. Girls rode in the back seat, boys rode in the front seat. And we just had a lot of fun.
But there must have been some of them. One of them you liked more than the others, and one of them liked you more than the others.
No,
right?
not really.
Not really.
Well, I had a date. Had 2 dates. No, I believe I had one. I believe just one date with Lee, and that was his mother. His mother brought that about. That was my senior. I was a senior, and he was a junior. And I know his mother. His mother wanted one of those boys to like me so much she didn't know what to do. But they we never did get together. But anyway, we were just good friends. And so we'd get together, but boys would get in the front, we'd get in the back, we'd go riding and all. And then we would Lucille would invite us all out for Sunday dinner, you know. We'd spend the afternoon out there. Or we'd go out to Ruth's, and Mama had a dinner and so forth for us when I graduated. We all of them came to my house, our apartment. We lived in an apartment. And so that's just the kind of relationship we had in high school. You know, and I had that one date, went to a show, that's all. I told, as I told Clyde last time I saw him, I said, I had my first date with Lee, and he walked on one side of the walk, and I did the other. I walked on the other side, edge of the walk.
Oh.
So then Charles and I went together, but we never got to go. We didn't go out that last year. Latter part of the year we went together. And then I went out to teach school out with Floyd, and we'd meet on Saturday afternoon and go to show. He was still in college, you know, and I took a course out to college. I had to have another course in education to get my certificate and the kind I wanted. And so I took that course out Wesley, and I'd go out there on Saturday and then come back to town, and he'd come in town, and we would go to show. And then once in a while he would come out to he would catch a jitney out to Floyd, and we'd have a date. And then he had a friend. Once I think he borrowed Uncle Maury's car, but I don't think he ever did that but once. And he had a friend there that he'd use his little roadster. Had a roadster. You know what those are? And he would come out to see me. We'd one time it was muddy weather. We'd gone up, you know, they just had 2 or 3 forks of hardtop around Greenville that went out toward Dallas, went about 2 or 3 miles out. And then there's one out toward Wood City and one out toward Floyd. And we had gone up toward Wood City. And I think this is after I was teaching school. I know it was. And he reached over to kiss me, and I wouldn't let him kiss me. And he ran off. A wheel got in the mud.
What you all?
I was old fashioned. I didn't want to kiss a boy. I didn't love, you know.
The courtship was a lot different then than it was even in my time, and then and today it's certainly a lot
and most of the girls then. Oh, howdy.
Were there any what we call loose girls around in those days?
Well, maybe 1 or 2 in Durham. I don't know. I didn't know. I know for sure.
You didn't live in that world.
No, I wasn't in their world.
Yeah. Well.
Although they did all kinds of things. Some of them did.
Well,
but he would send me. He'd send me flowers out. He'd send flowers out on jitney. They call them jitneys. It's just a car, touring car, you know. He'd send flowers. He sent me flowers several times.
Was there a bus from Wesley College into Greenville, or how'd y'all?
Yeah. Old man Wright. Old man, we call him, Mr. Wright. Yeah.